Hello, everyone. I'm Jessie Cool, and I started restaurants in your neighborhood in 1976, beginning with Late for the Train. Now I operate Flea Street. She turned 40 years old this year, and the Cool Café at the Cantor Arts Center. I am so honored to be able to have a conversation with José Andrés because though he is much more global than I am, in my community, I absolutely share his values about justice through food, through restaurants, through the growing of ingredients, through farms. And it's a part of our work to make sure that we continue to infuse love, justice, one plate, one sandwich, a big table into our community, not only during hard times, pandemics, or fires, but all the time. And Jose is with us today because he knows about Post. He knows about the work we do. And together we care about this. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Native people whose territories we are joining from, considering Post working on the peninsula and the South Bay. I'd like to acknowledge the Amamutsun tribal band and the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, as well as the Ramaytush Ohlone. This event is part of Peninsula Open Space Trust Wallace Stegner Lectures, an annual tradition for Post since 1993. Named after the author Wallace Stegner, these lectures bring our community together to deepen our commitment to this land that is our home, and to understanding that our communities are connected to nature and the land in diverse ways. Since its beginning, the series has been made possible by my dear friends, Bill and Jean Lane, and their generous endowment. They were the founding sponsors of the series and steadfast supporters of Post during their lives. We'd also like to thank the additional sponsors that you see on your screen, including Sandhill Global Advisors, Malone Media, the Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati Foundation, One World, Alex and Lily Wang, Pie Ranch, and Embarcadero Media. We'd also like to thank all of you, subscribers to the lectures and supporters of Post, for joining us tonight. Tonight, I am so very honored to engage in a conversation with José Andrés. José is a Michelin-starred, James Beard Award-winning Spanish-American chef. He is the author of 3 cookbooks and the New York Times best-selling book, We Feed an Island, which describes how Andrés and his team cooked for hundreds of thousands of hungry Americans in Puerto Rico after the devastation of Hurricane Maria. His relief organization, World Central Kitchen, has responded to natural and man-made disasters in countries on 5 continents. This has included massive bushfires in Australia, devastating hurricanes in Central America, and much more. Like my monthly donation to Post, I do the same with World Central Kitchen and was a volunteer chef when World Central Kitchen served free meals to those in need during the Sonoma fires, and also to those stranded and quarantined on the Grand Princess ship at the onset of the pandemic. Jose does so much more because at his soul, he is a cook, a teacher, and connected to community. He believes in justice and walks the walk of a true hero. In his newest book, Vegetables Unleashed, he describes how the home cook can approach preparing vegetables in fresh and surprising ways that help reduce food waste and reduce our carbon footprint. As a longtime Peninsula resident, as an elder now, and a chef, and also, like Jose, an activist for justice through food, I resonate with him that we use our skills, our heart, our connections to sustainability and equity. We love our community. And maybe most importantly, we both have an ability to have fun in the midst of upheaval everywhere on the planet. I am very excited to be with you, my community, and Jose today. We need the kind of inspiration he has to offer to so many to make our world a kinder, more respectful place. As he would say, just do it. One plate, one sandwich, one person at a time. With that, let's welcome Jose. I am so happy and excited to be with you, my community, today, but also to be in conversation with Jose Andrés. He is a hero of the future. I am an elder in this community, but we both walk the same path, and we both believe that by connecting to our community in a kinder, more respectful way, and as Jose would say, we don't necessarily have to do anything more than one plate, one sandwich, and one person at a time. And with that, Jose, I think we should just start talking with each other. And we'll just let them listen. How about that?
Listen, I'm so thrilled and so humbled to be with you all, but especially with you, Jesse. I mean, come on. I feel obviously receiving any praise from you. It's amazing because we know everything you've done. Probably before even in many ways I was born, you already had restaurants that were super successful and marching the way, and you've been so iconic in so many aspects from your role with universities and beyond, and obviously to partner with you in World Central Kitchen, like in the Sonoma fires with your Meals of Gratitude Foundation, and that World Central Kitchen and Meals of Gratitude together, we were able to be doing our little response to Sonoma fires in such a simple, efficient way. And this gives me a lot of joy. So this is only to tell you thank you, because I do believe that we all need to be building longer tables and shorter walls. And even if we didn't spend time together in quantity or quality, it's very amazing when you are with people that in the distance. I'm in Europe right now. I'm in Spain. You are all the way to California. We feel like we know each other, like we are brothers and sisters, that together very much we can believe that we can change the world one plate of food at a time. So thank you. An honor to be here with you.
I think we both realize that the work we do is just the way we live our lives and put our feet on the planet and put our arms around our community and each other. So why don't we start talking a little bit about your core philosophies that both of us share about social and food justice. How would you describe that connection of your work with restaurants, because we've both been in that world and still are, and World Central Kitchen? And how has that changed during the pandemic?
So I'm going to start by how this has changed during the pandemic. Has not changed. If anything, has increased my understanding that we all must work smarter together, and that we cannot hesitate to let one more day pass without making food and food justice a very important issue. I do believe that food justice very much is to provide for the voiceless, to provide for the people that seems are ghost of our system. In a moment that unemployment before the pandemic was at its lowest, we had total employment. How it is possible that still we had Americans that had to be using food banks and to be in lines, used to be grabbing some food to be able to eat. Food justice is to give dignity to people. People don't want our pity, people want our respect. How do you give respect to people? You give respect to people when you are behind their cells with the wind so they can move on their own. Is when you are there listening to their needs, not just to give them what we think those communities in need are. Food justice is when people have access to a market that sells fresh vegetables and fruits in the same way that you and I can. That people have quick access without having to spend money on an Uber, money they don't have. Food justice is when the people are working on the farms, undocumented or not, people that without them, you and I, we wouldn't be having fruits and vegetables to feed our families. But still those men and women are not given the dignity they deserve because we understand that parts of America wouldn't be functioning without them. Food justice is understanding that this is a new form of slavery. We may be paying them, but they are still far away from saying we are treating them with the respect and dignity they deserve. And at the end is making sure that the people that feed America and feed the world, we fundamentally understand that sometimes they cannot even feed themselves. And this is a conundrum we need to resolve. That's food justice, is to make sure that the goodness of the earth is shared by all. I know there'll be people criticizing, this is communism, this is socialism. What the heck? This is just pragmatism, American empathy at best, is making sure that capitalism works for all, where the new American dream is what must be good for me and my family must be good for the people I don't know. That should be the beginning of food justice.
Jose, you used the word respectful. And actually through the pandemic, the three words we went back to over and over again when we didn't quite know how to get our community to really understand how hard it was for us. And through World Central Kitchen, you really have created a new model that's very exciting for me. We were already doing it with our Meals of Gratitude, where rather than volunteers, which was what I was doing with my initial work with World Central Kitchen, you started really building, or maybe always have entrepreneurial ownership through kitchens and feeding people, so you could get people back on the ground to be respectful, responsible, and safe. And those are the three guiding words that have led us through the community of understanding what's going on in restaurants. What you're now doing by again, not just volunteers, but through supporting local businesses is something that I'd love for you to explain to this audience a little bit.
Well, Jesse, the sad part or the funny part is that still I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously, World Central Kitchen has been a dream of mine for a very long time. A dream that didn't happen overnight, that was many moments and people that planted the seed on me of willing to be part of not only feeding the few, like I've done, like you've done so well, but also being part of feeding the many. For me, my mom and my dad were nurses. They loved to cook when they were not in the hospital. I spent a lot of time in the hospitals because they had different shifts and they will exchange my brothers and I right at the hospital grounds.
It sort of sounds like the restaurant business, Jose Andres.
Very much.
Yeah.
And I saw nurses and doctors like them, like we've seen in this pandemic, that they will always go beyond their duty, reading a book to a little boy waiting for their family or taking for a walk an older gentleman that needed to move and do some healthy sports. But my father loved to cook. My mother will always do amazing things with leftovers. We didn't go to restaurants. I only remember the dishes at the end of the month, what she did with the leftovers. My father loved to cook on Sundays. Even both helped. My father always helped in the kitchen as much as anybody. And he will make a big paella and on the open fire, the rice dish. He told me that more important than cooking was controlling the fire. Learn to control the fire, and then you can do any cooking you want. This was obviously a great lesson for a young cook in the making, but also a great metaphor for life. Control the fire, and you will control the cooking of your life. But arriving to DC was important for me. Meeting John Steinbeck, the first American novelist writer I read in English, The Pearl, where I saw the first time I saw inequality. I didn't see hunger where I grew up. The Grapes of Wrath, which I love. I was in the Navy, in the Spanish Navy, in a sail ship, foremast, sailing the world in the training ship of the Spanish midshipmen. And first time I came to Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. First time I came to America, Pensacola and New York. My life has been an adventure, and in many ways it still is. I'm telling you all of this because this is very important to understand that I arrived DC is when I began understanding hunger, poverty, understanding empathy, and looking after the voiceless and after other people that needed your help. When I arrived DC, I met Robert Egger, the founder of This is Central Kitchen over 35 years ago. And he's the guy that told me that charity seems is about the redemption of the giver, when charity must be about the liberation of the receiver. Think about it. Doing good is not enough anymore. Yes, we must do a smart good. It's okay to feel good when you donate and you help, but we must do more than just feeling good ourselves. We must make sure that we have a return on investment, especially on the people we want to help. With all that in mind, my restaurant in Jaleo, 1993, when I opened, I realized 2 years later that was in front of the missing soldiers' office. The home and the office were Mrs. Clara Barton, our heroine that took care of the wounded soldiers during the Civil War. Single-handed, like my mom was a nurse, she was able to provide relief to so many people, creating the infrastructure to make it happen. Where there is a will, there is a way. She founded the American Red Cross. When Katrina happened and I saw what happened at the Superdome, man, I'm still today very upset with myself that I didn't took on a plane and I went there, because a Coliseum, a stadium, is nothing more than a gigantic restaurant that entertains with the sports and music. If a cook like me and others will arrive, no American was supposed to be going hungry during days like happened at the Superdome. With those ideas, everything in between is when Haiti happened, the earthquake happened, and I went there a few weeks, 2-3 weeks later, not to help, but to learn how to help. That's when I decided with my wife and my partner, Rob Wilder, and his wife, Robin, we put, I think, $50,000 each, or 100, I don't remember. And we created Wallace Central Kitchen with one idea. Let's make sure that nobody around America will be hungry in an emergency, will be thirsty in an emergency. In this pandemic, on our way to 50 million meals, 3,000 restaurants that we were able to support in a way that the money we got donated, we channeled through the restaurants, because who better than feed America and people in need than chefs and restaurants themselves? No, a crazy idea, a very pragmatic, simple idea. At one moment, more than 300,000 meals a day. In the darkest moment, the men and women of the restaurant industry, of the food industry, thanks to people like you, Jesse, thanks to people like all the teams, and led by Nate Mook, my friend and leader of Wallace Central Kitchen, and the many people that help us not only in America through hurricanes and fires in the middle of a pandemic. I'm very proud that we were able to, one plate of food at a time, bring hope from the Navajo Nation to Oakland, to Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx and Harlem, to hospitals, to elderly homes, to homeless in the street. When the systems were shutting down is when Wallace Central Kitchen became at its best. That's who we are, bringing hope, as I said before, one plate of food at a time.
I've always been moved by your pragmatism and your soulfulness. And besides your work coming from your heart and urgency to simply feed others, which really is explained more from your family upbringing. But that combined with how you as a restaurateur connect to the land, know the importance of farms, know that we have to be fair and kind and just and pay a good price to the people who grow our food. This word respectful can never be said enough. And can you go on a little more? This is my egg, by the way. I have chickens and a garden, José Andrés, right out there. It is a place of peace for me. That and my martini every night are two ways that I start the day and end the day with peace and connection to my work, to the land, and to food. And with this egg, I'd kind of like to keep going back and forth with the work of a restaurateur and somebody who deeply cares for community. But talk a little bit about cooking and about what you love about teaching, which, by the way, I really encourage everyone to watch his video on the snow cocktail and the snow cake, because they're two of my favorites, José Andrés, because you have fun in the midst of all this. So cooking, fun, your family.
I mean, obviously for me in this pandemic, taking care of my daughters and my wife was first. My wife is the biggest gift life and God has ever given me, can ever give me. My wife is really my anchor and my rock in so many ways. She's there in my not so good times. She's always there in making sure that the good times are even better, and she's always lifting me up. And you say my philosophy on cooking. My philosophy on cooking is simple. I am only as good as the people I have around me. I am who I am thanks to them. I'm sure all of you listening to us, if you really look deep in, sometimes we even forget people that were very important in our lives, even with very short engagements. Maybe it was a teacher that gave us a very wise word or phrase, or somebody that gave us a smile or gave us a hand in a moment of disrepair. It's a whole bunch of people that we don't even know, but because we read something about them or we listen or we see social media about them, impact who we are and makes us think about how to be part of this world we live in. And at the end, cooking, my philosophy of cooking is I am who I am thanks to those people. Really, I told you the story about my father and my mother and the story of the fire that really changed my life in many ways. But I try to understand what brings us together. Why is this love for food? Why food seems like, even in this pandemic, that I've been able to get senators on both parties and congressmen on both parties agreeing to one bill that still didn't pass, but everybody supports that bill. A bill about food, the FEED Act, making sure that FEMA and the government supports the mayors and the states to empower the restaurants to pay them 100% of the meal so we can feed people in need immediately. Everybody supports that. Food, breaking bread, brings people together, longer tables. This is what I always see in food. So my life cooking, probably the love I have for cooking is the same love you do. If you think about it, the first act of kindness we receive, we're unconscious. What happens is food. When our mother or our father feeds us with that love that only a mother can give, bringing you close to her, the warmth of her body, telling you that you're here and you're welcome and nothing will ever happen to you. And that the first physical gift you receive is food itself. I wish I was conscious in that moment, because I do believe we all have that love for sharing long tables, of sharing the food we have in our kitchens, in our table, with people we know and people we don't know at the time. I do believe this because our mothers planted that seed in us of being a giver, of sharing empathy, of sharing the goodness of the earth that we possess. And these carry on. And I sincerely believe my love of cooking began in that moment. I cannot remember because I was few minutes old, few hours old. With that in mind, obviously, my life and the story I told you about my dad and helping him making that fire. I was not a very good student. It's funny because I was learning how to program on BASIC, and I was doing my own programs for mathematics and study Latin and English. And I will even program my own video games. Those are the days of the Commodore 64 and those other, the Amstrad and all those computers that we had, the cassettes, the tapes to record our programming. And I went, but learning the traditional way was not for me. And my father saw my love for cooking, and he was able to put me in a cooking school very early on. A cooking school that I had to be 18, but my father was very convincing, and I got in when I was barely 15, going to 16. I didn't go to school. I barely graduated. 30 years later, they gave me the title only because they used me as a marketing tool. But I began learning the same way I always tell everybody how things should be happening, with boots on the ground. I began working in the morning in one of the 2-star Michelin restaurants in Barcelona, Nachel, and at night in Reno, another Michelin restaurant that was very traditional in Catalan cooking. I was learning modernity and I was learning tradition. Nothing wrong. They are not in a fight. They must be together. We need to make sure we give respect to both. But as a young boy, I was learning about those cookings very early in my years. But for me, something changed. That obviously I had a lot of people that for some reason they always were vested in my success. Professors, teachers that really spent time making sure I would not fail. I will work 7 days a week, sometimes 12 hours a day, non-stop. Why? Because for me it was no work. For me it was my life. It was everything I enjoyed. For me, being in a kitchen all day was just another moment to learn. My days off will be to go to restaurants or go to work to another kitchen to learn what they were doing. I went that first summer of roughly of 1984, 1985 to a town called Rosas in the north of Barcelona. And I began working in a summer restaurant, making seafood and paellas with a great chef that was teaching me in real time many of the techniques that sometimes it takes you 10, 15, 20 years to learn. I met one person called Ferran Adria. Ferran Adria is genius of geniuses. He's not only the best chef in the last 20 centuries of humanity or beyond. He's one of the most creative people that you can meet. If Ferran Adria was from a pharmaceutical company, right now every single person in the world will have a vaccine. That's how generous he was. Was the guy that told me, don't do things because everybody tells you that you must do it that way. Ask yourself the question, and yourself, you must find the answer. Don't honor tradition, but don't just follow the path of tradition. You must write your own book. You must walk and create your own pathway. And with that simple idea, Ferran Adria planted in me and in thousands of people around the world. When for me, it was like being at the Big Bang. It's like if Steve Hawking told me, go there and the Big Bang is about to start. Obviously, he didn't create cooking, but yes, he created a new way to think about cooking, where we are not slaves of the recipe anymore, but we are seekers of truth. And these days, Ferran and I, 12 years ago, a friend who was my mentor, who is one of the most generous people ever, that created more techniques single-handed that in cooking that the last 100 years, every single chef on planet Earth has created together. Remember, that's very powerful. From esterifications and foams and a whole bunch of techniques, only because he made me and everybody else smarter. Because we always understood that the most important thing in life is to ask the right question. A very good question will always be smarter and more important than a good answer. And Ferran taught me that. 12 years ago, we began these classes in Harvard at the physics department with 2 professors. Now, 2 cooks next to 2 professors, we were able to be teaching cooking, but actually we were explaining physics through cooking. You see, Ferran taught me that life starts at the end of your comfort zone, somebody said. And that's what we've been doing. And that's what Ferran helped me become, to be away from your comfort zone, because it's where life starts, but also is where you find really who you are and what you are capable of. Those are some of my philosophies of cooking.
José Andrés, you talk about fire and you talk about your family. And in working with World Central Kitchen, I drove and volunteered. So I wasn't just a donor. And that's how I actually learned how to model meals of gratitude. I watched how you team and World Central Kitchen is so connected to the community wherever you are. And many of these people in the audience support local farms. They support farmland security. When you travel all over, and sometimes your team moves into utter devastation, how do you connect to where the food comes from? How do you make sure you can get eggs and this vegetables, this beautiful book you just wrote on real food? Distill down a little bit so they feel like they're really doing something to support your work by supporting Post. Local food.
Listen, when we go to these emergencies, 2 degrees is not any different than when I have a restaurant. And I'm trying to use as local I can. We need to be also careful with the idea of totally local or kilometer zero. Because if we become islands of our own communities, sometimes also can be negative in the way that we forget what is beyond our places. That's why for me, commerce is very smart. And I believe that we need to be local in the most pragmatic way. Why we need to be bringing salads from 5,000 miles away when we have 0 calories? Why we will spend energy to move energy that is 0? It doesn't make any sense. For me, if you spend a day with me in DC and you go with me to the farmers markets, the first farmers market in downtown DC in DuPont Circle happened over 27 years ago, founded by a woman called Nora Puyon. It's a legendary woman, a legendary chef. She was a visionary. She probably was the first restaurant in America, probably in the world, 100% organic. Even the bathroom paper was organic. Nora Puyon is the person that not only founded that market, a market that I bought every single vegetable that I fed my daughters, every single puree and meal my daughters ate since they were able to start eating vegetables and fruits came from that market. But Nora did something much more important. She was able to take me to places as far as one of the best areas we had, like Tuscarora in Pennsylvania, 2 hours drive from DC. There, she made me discover an amazing co-op of people like New Morning Farm and Amish farmers, that they create this amazing co-op where a chef like me all of a sudden could be getting squash blossoms at the peak of the freshness, and I will get them sometimes 4 hours after they were harvested. All of those things, we understand the power that gives us. From the milk to the eggs, to be able to know the name of the person that brings those eggs to the market. That happens is the same person that probably picked those eggs that morning and put them into the boxes. This gives us a sense that we understand what's going on. gives us knowledge of knowing what's happening in our society, in our community. And this gives us a power that then, in emergencies, that knowledge allows you to respond in a way that nobody else can. Obviously, you will say, Jose, you know Washington, D.C. well, but you don't know Puerto Rico, or you don't know Oakland. You don't live there. You cannot know it like you do, or San Francisco, or Santa Fe. You're right, but I know the people that do. So I can be pretentious and come with the mentality, as we always say, white man that comes to help somebody and he doesn't listen, but he does what he thinks that somebody needs. No, we arrive and we listen and we get as much information from locals as we can. And these allow us to do things like we did in Puerto Rico. When I landed in Puerto Rico, after Maria devastated the island, 3.7 million Americans without water and food, in an island that was totally destroyed. No electricity, no communications, no cell signal, no water because the electricity didn't allow the pumps to work. So homes were not receiving water that was drinkable, no gas, so was no cars because the electricity was needed to move the pumps to make sure the cars could be getting. All of a sudden, the island was in chaos. We were able to go from 1,000 meals to 25,000, from 1,000 meals a day to 150,000 meals a day. We were 10 friends the first day, 10 cooks that we all responded to my WhatsApp message, I'm here. When a chef sends a message to friends in the middle of a hurricane destruction, what do you think it means? I'm here means it's hope. Let's get together. Let's do what we know how to do best. Let's cook. Let's make the fire. Let's start feeding the community. Let's solve the problems one plate of food at a time. But then we need ingredients. Food is always available, my friends. In the case of bread, when we had FEMA that was trying to bring bread from Florida, you know the men and women of World Central Kitchen, what we did? I just met the two owners of the two bakeries in town, local bakeries, local people, good bakery with good infrastructure. They didn't have electricity. They even had generators. They needed the gas. They needed the fuel. What was Central Kitchen did with partnering with the local police and local National Guard? Guys, we don't need to bring the bread from Florida. It's going to take weeks. Get me this, and we can be putting two farms, two factories to work, two bread making facilities to work. Before we knew, 24 hours later, we had all the bread we needed. You see, big problems have very simple solutions. When we went to Indonesia and all was a lot of destruction, what happens then? When we went to Haiti, America did very well in Haiti. I was very proud during President Obama. The response to the earthquake in Haiti was huge. But let me tell you what happened. And let me tell you why doing good is not good enough. We must do a smart good. We gave so much rice for free and so much food that all of a sudden the rice producing regions of Haiti, they couldn't be selling the rice because nobody was buying the rice, because the international organizations and countries that came to help didn't come with money to buy from locals. They decided, which maybe is the right thing to do in a way, to bring their own farm reserves. But in the process of giving free rice to feed Haitians, we began something worse. People that were in their communities were getting poor because they had no jobs. They had no jobs because they didn't need anymore their crops, because they couldn't sell the crops, because there was so much free food in Port-au-Prince that nobody was buying from the farmers all across the parts of Haiti. All of a sudden, in the process of trying to help people, we created more poverty and more people unemployed. When we were supposed to be smarter by doing this, instead of dumping all the rice for free and then disappearing, all of a sudden, all the farmers that went broke didn't have more seeds. They were not planting. All of a sudden, the rice price increased, almost doubled by price, because they had to be importing in a moment that the rice was going up. So in the process of helping, we create a bigger problem. That's why we must be helping the local community from the first second in emergencies to raise above the ashes on their own. In Guatemala, when we landed in Escuintla and Antigua after the volcano Fuego exploded, we began doing what we do best. Instead of bringing food from faraway places, we began buying crops before they were about to be lost from every single farmer that had something to sell. This way, we didn't only feed the thousands of people in shelters because they had to move because the lava and the volcano explosion destroyed their homes or they were in danger of a future explosion. But in the process, we were making sure that we were next to the community, so the community will lift itself up. They don't want our pity, they want our respect. The way to be respectful, in our case, every time, is being there next to them, not throwing money at the problem, but investing into the solution. When $1 is multiplied by 5, right now in Puerto Rico, we have 150 to 100 farms that after Maria, 6 months, a year later, we gave grants to make sure that they could keep functioning, making cheese, that they could adapt to, so the next hurricane will not destroy the crops, to make sure that we will diversify crops, to make sure that we will produce things that could be produced in the island and they will not have to import it into the island, to make sure that we give them resilience to take care of themselves without the help of anybody anymore. Right now, when something happens in Puerto Rico, we have an army of men and women that activate on their own, where we have the food from the farms, where we have the food trucks, where we have the chefs and the restaurant kitchens that we can open after an earthquake, after a hurricane, or in the middle of a pandemic. This is the type of resilience that is beyond the food we eat, but is more important about the people, making people resilient. Therefore, using food, they can be powerful and no problem is going to be big enough because they will always be ready to overcome that problem.
Jose, I love this. First of all, Nora Puyon is a dear friend of mine too. We traveled all over the world together and we were kind of organic princesses way back in the 70s. And I think what you've just really expressed that is truly different about the work you do is that not only do you connect to the food and the people producing the food or the people cooking the food, just like I do in my community, you also help them rise up. You don't just give it to them. You saw that as a mistake, that you had to figure out how to make sure they could take care of themselves then and not be dependent, building businesses. This is brilliant. And yeah, I mean, you may not see it that way because you are a fundamentalist. You know, well, this is just what you do. It's what you were taught, right? You just make sure you take care of people when they're in need, but also help them get back on their feet and be.
But you know, Jesse, one thing I do believe, all of us, that I believe we share the same values. We need to stop talking about food waste. Yes. Sometimes it's the only thing. I don't care about food waste anymore. I don't.
I agree.
But hold on, let me tell you why. We must be talking about wasting people's life. Of course, we shouldn't be having food waste. Offshore, we must be smarter in a moment that there is hunger to make sure that what the earth produces is used to benefit all. But we must always put people above dignity. We need to be talking about, we are not wasting food. When we waste food, actually what we're wasting is people's life. Let's make sure we waste no life. That's another form of, obviously, of food justice.
I think that's something that anyone connected to farms now, anyone paying attention and realizing that one of the most valuable parts of the farm and one of the places where the farmer or the fisherman or the rancher show great pride is in their compost. And, you know, in my restaurant and many others, they pick up our waste every Sunday and they bring it and they put it in a pile in my backyard and we make soil to grow more vegetables. But it's disgraceful to think that, that, as you say, that the waste of not only food, but of energy and what goes into it is something that has kind of shifted from the Western world's awareness. When we travel to other places, there is no waste. It is so disrespectful. It doesn't honor the people or the product or the nourishment of our community. Yes?
But everything is really about distribution. Life is about distribution. Everything is about distribution. If you have love and you don't distribute love, there is no love in the world. It's not enough that there's a lot of love in one place. We must distribute love. Apply the same for everything else: tangibles, food, electricity, water, education, know-how, empathy. Distribution is key. Without distribution, nothing happens. On the small farms, I do believe that we need to start talking about food as a national security issue. We are too comfortable thinking like food forever will be plentiful. And I'm afraid the same way September 11 happened, something major may be happening. The next terrorist attack may come through our food sources. Why? Because we don't diversify. When the few companies are in charge of feeding the many people of the world, the opportunities we have of something going wrong scale exponentially. We become too comfortable. I have no problem with big companies. I want to have a big company one day, but I don't want to have a company at the expense of others not doing well. In our food ways, in our food system, we must encourage the maximum amount of diversity. Diversity in the people that are given the opportunity to have land and be productive on the land. Yes, big farms, fine, but we must do the same we do for the big farms in terms of policy, in terms of subsidies. We must do for the middle and the smaller size farms. We need that diversity also of people working on those lands to bring who they are and the tradition, but also to enjoy the goodness of the earth and the possibilities they have of making a living that is never easy, and that is hard, but that's the life they want to live, and we should honor them making their life as easy as we can. But it's also the seeds we grow. I'm very afraid that we keep moving into those 6-7 seeds that cover the big percentage of all the food we produce in the world. We must diversify. In this pandemic, we saw 2-3 locusts that ate big parts and extensions in that plague of different grains in Africa. At the same time, we had floodings in Central America. At the same time, we had fires in California and Colorado. At the same time, we had fires in Australia. At the same time, we had is one moment that if we are not careful, the food we take for granted may not be there any longer. Remember that Upton Sinclair, who was the last person that read Upton Sinclair at the USDA, FDA? Upton Sinclair at the beginning of the 1900s was telling us about how the slaughterhouses of America were being run, how badly the workers, many of them immigrants, were being treated, how it is possible that in this pandemic, many of them had to close because the workers were working so closely together and working at such a speed that the slaughterhouses had one of the highest degree of sick people with COVID-19 everywhere, and they had to shut down many of them. How is we didn't learn from Upton Sinclair? How is we didn't learn from what happened in 1918 in this pandemic, in the Spanish flu pandemic, badly called Spanish flu? So what I want to say is that food needs to be seen as a national security issue. Food is something like every single department is going to have a Trojan horse food expert. Food deserts, how we can end food deserts. If we make the Department of Housing and Urban Development working next to Treasury, working next to USDA, working next to the Department of Health, the reason we need food deserts to end is obvious. We can make America that is healthier Then let's bring the Department of Health. We need to do smart investments in the community. Let's bring Treasury that they will support the investment. We must make sure that our small farmers have more places that they can sell what they produce. We need to bring the USDA. These is the ways that we need all to be thinking about how food can be an amazing force of good, an amazing force of change, and where food can be the solution of many of the problems we face if we take this holistic approach. And finally, we bring food closer to the President of the United States, inside the White House, treating it as a national security issue, and then only then we'll start fixing many of the problems we face.
Yeah, Obama definitely tried to do that, and you are now a part of a wonderful TV show with Michelle Obama. But this is an audience that understands that it does have to be both local, national, global. But I think many would say, when you talk about one plate, one sandwich, one step at a time, what can they do? They're deeply caring. Give a few ideas of what that one person sitting at the long table can do.
Well, we've been touching on some. I mean, you, Jesse, you are the perfect example.
Yes, but I'm in the business with you and my nonprofit. These are good people who you say donate, who want to understand what do they do in their life.
Listen, this is very simple. We're talking about philanthropy, and I mentioned it before. We must do with philanthropy the same we do with our private business. You know what I think World Central Kitchen has been successful? Because I do believe we are like a startup. we are a startup. There is a problem. Actually, we don't see it as a problem. There is an opportunity, and we create the system to provide those services. People need to be fed. We create the services to be fed in the middle of an emergency. Bahamas. 80,000 people in Dorian, 14 islands north of the capital, Nassau, totally destroyed. Dorian was almost 3 days above Abaco. The destruction was beyond something we can imagine. I landed there when still the hurricane was north of the Bahamas. In the first moment, the president and the control tower allow us to start moving in. Next to the U.S. Coast Guard, World Central Kitchen, we had the first helicopter on the ground. We had a kitchen that we had prepared to use. When I got there, we realized that the kitchen was being underwater for 3 days. We couldn't use it. The plan didn't work. Today, in this DNA, we plan too much. We need to start thinking that adaptation is more powerful than planning. Why? Because when you plan too much, you will realize that life never goes as you plan. And if you are only trained to follow the plan, you freeze in emergencies. We must be adapting. Adaptation will always win the day. What will Central Kitchen men and women did? We needed helicopters. The hurricane was still moving towards Florida. We couldn't bring helicopters from Florida. We began finding any helicopter from the islands behind the hurricane. We got the first big one from Haiti, others. Before we knew, we had 6 helicopters. We were doing multiple landings in 14 islands, in multiple sites. We were bringing food from Nassau. We had the boat moving from Fort Lauderdale into Grand Bahama. We were able to start bringing with that boat 500,000 pounds of food. We did that during 2-3 weeks, every time 500,000 pounds of food. We began feeding people in Grand Bahama, and from Nassau, feeding 12 other islands through a helicopter every day. Why through helicopter? Because it was not other option. You see, big problems have very simple solutions. In less than 6 days, we were able to do 75,000 meals a day, every day. In the process, we did medical evacuations. In the process, we brought generators. We brought water filtration for salt water systems running on solar. We were able to bring chainsaws. Why? Because we were the first, and because we were next to the community every day. Sometimes in emergencies, we have the mentality of parachutes. Companies bring MREs and they think they drop the MRE and everything is solved. No, MREs don't solve anything. They're too expensive and nobody wants them. And other people get sick by eating them. Showing up every day and listening what they need and seeing the change in how they are receiving the aid week after week is when gives you comfort that maybe slowly, but things are getting better. The same happened in Providencia in Colombia when I was there last September, feeding 8,000 people a day in the middle of the Atlantic with nothing. We were able to bring by helicopter every day 8,000 meals until we were able to be building a kitchen. But how everybody can help? Look inside you. Look your talents. Look what you can give to your community beyond money. Obviously, money is always important, but inside you, you all have something like nobody else has. And you must learn how to put that at the service of others, not only to help the few, but to help the many. With that, I want to say my talent was that I connect the dots. I'm not good very much at anything. I'm only good at understanding who really can help me achieve what people need. That's my only talent, probably, nothing else. Everybody must then do this. Whatever philanthropy for you means time or money or connections. We cannot do good anymore. It's way too many people in need, way too many things that need to be improved. Let's start taking care of philanthropy in the same way, as I said before, as we take our private business. Let's make sure that we understand what's the return on investment. Let's make sure that we don't throw money at the problem, but we invest into the solution. Make sure that we invest in things that are sustainable and can grow. That's the only way we can be. I'm tired of raising money to keep fixing the problems. I want to tell people, I don't want you to donate money to us. I want to tell people, I want you to invest money in the community with things that are sustainable, that help people get through, and that help those communities to rise above the place they are of darkness. And I do believe food is a great way for us to achieve this. It's an amazing Trojan horse for all of us to achieve that dream, that food, longer tables, shorter walls can be the beginning of a better tomorrow. Let's make sure that when we do help in philanthropy, we don't do good anymore, but we do smart good. Let's make sure that we help liberate the receiver. Nothing else is worth our time. We all together, we must do better. The old recipes of the past, they are proving that don't work. Let's write new recipes to fix the problems of the future and look at the horizon of hope, really with the belief that we together can fix many of the problems that our communities face.
Jose, during the fires, you came here and we did this in collaboration with Meals of Gratitude and World Central Kitchen, but the community did too, because what happened first was we rushed in, especially to Pescadero, where a lot of farms are located. We rushed in and we were able to help them initially, but then they started helping themselves. And they saw the model that you presented of using their own church kitchens and school kitchens and producing meals in a similar manner of a protein, a starch, a vegetable in one package. The model that you initiated, the community embraced. And I think you would agree that we have to make sure to not just do this during pandemics or fires or emergencies, but we have to do this all the time. That is the beauty of the farmland initiative with Peninsula Open Space Trust, is they are very slowly bringing it back to our backyard. And we are feeding in Pescadero, Puente, the farm workers. We are making sure that they have work. We are making sure that they have a place to live. And I think that while we have this big local and global picture, from many of the things you have just said, you want us to keep bringing it home.
Listen, what you guys do, at Post. I hope I'll be. I've been walking on the redwood, so I wish I could walk more often. But I've been there with my wife. We love to walk. Actually, today in 2019, around April, I weighed 293 pounds. I'm not proud. I eat very good food, but I'm not proud. There you see that we have this problem. Even I can afford to have a better quality. Even myself, too much. It's crazy that a guy like me can be so obese, and then I have people in my own community that can be so poor and even hungry. I began thinking we all need to be a little bit more people of example. I didn't only do it to be healthier for my wife and my family and for everybody that sometimes depend on me in my business, and maybe Wallace Stegner Kitchen. Even nobody needs me anymore because everything runs on its own. But I used to be 293 pounds. Today I reached 220. I lost 73 pounds. And the way I did it was walking. I love to walk. My wife loves to walk. It's the best moment that we become no husband and wife, but good friends. For us, it's great to be listening to birds. That's why today probably you heard some birds. I wish you could see how beautiful it is where I am in the south of Spain. I am a guy that I scuba dive a lot. My latest hobby is listening to the birds. Sometimes when you listen to the birds and you don't know what you're listening to, it's like you're listening to something you don't understand. I began using apps, and now I began recognizing the singing of the birds. And all of a sudden, it's like I see the forest I walk in. I see through my ears. And this is a beautiful thing. Like a forest can allow you to see through your ears. Also, being underwater is good. That obviously everything that has to be with open space. I surfed in a board of pristine seas in National Geographic. My friend Eric Sala, he's been protecting ocean with big parks in different parts of the world. And for me, I see the value when I go to scuba dive in one of those protected areas, the value that brings to planet Earth, the same value that you guys at Post has done, bringing value to your communities, becoming an example for other parts of America and other parts of the world. So a man like me can walk, can feel free, can be blind no more, because even with the ears, I can walk through life, where I can, in my process, be healthier by those long walks that I love to do. And at the end of the day, it's kind of funny. I said before that let's believe in longer tables and shorter walls. We could say, let's believe in a wall with longer hikes and lower fences. This could be, if we bring both together, the perfect world to live in.
Jose, this makes me so happy. I think we will end soon, but I have an invitation for you. I have a little cottage behind my house where you and your wife can come and stay, and we can cook together in my kitchen. And then, because what got me through the pandemic was to walk in the hills. 3 to 4 times a week, I would take 6 to 10 mile hikes by myself or with a friend to clear my mind and connect the way you are. And I do hear the birds, by the way, it's wonderful. To connect with myself and my environment. And that is what I would love to have you come and do this with me. Will you come hike with me in these hills? I can show you the farmlands here, or I'll come there too.
Yeah, that's in Marbella. So thank you for having me. I will take you on your invitation. I hope I'll meet many of you. And remember, John Steinbeck in Grapes of Wrath, the main character at the end of the book, he said, wherever there is a fight so hungry people will eat, I will be there. I took that phrase with permission of Steinbeck, and we made it Wallace Stegner Kitchen motto. And now we say, wherever there is a fight so hungry people will eat, we will be there. Sometimes people are not just hunger physically, which is bad enough, but sometimes just people are hungry spiritually. They feel alone. They feel they don't belong. Let's make sure that one farm at a time, one hike at a time, one protected land at a time, one plate of food at a time. We give people the dignity they deserve, and we send them the message that they do belong. And one plate of food at a time, sometimes, quite frankly, is just the way to start finding solutions to many of the problems we face. So let's do it together. Longer tables, shorter walls.
Jose, thank you for joining us in a conversation about justice, food, community, and love. And I am going to send an invitation for you to come and walk with me and cook with me and drink with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you to all.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you, Jose. This concludes our season of the Stegner Lectures for 2021. We want to once again thank the sponsors for their support of the Wallace Stegner Lectures and of Post. There are always lots of events and interesting things happening with Post, so be sure to read our emails and check our website to stay up to date. Until we meet again, good night, and I hope to see you out there on the trails.
Monterey, I got the other day, I got red lobsters from there, and I got abalone from there.
Really? Oh, wow.
And I got sea urchin.
Scuba diving?
Well, I got a lot.
Or you just picked them up?
Nobody's eating the sea urchin because the sea stars got a sickness.
Yes.
And so the sea urchin, they've been developing like crazy. And for me, it's been very good news because I'm the biggest eater of sea urchin in the history of mankind. I mean, when I tell you, this means that I sit down and I eat 100 sea urchin, okay? 100 on my own.
So,
and if they tell me that thanks to doing this, I will save the marine life because great.
You're like the apex predator of the.
I'm the shark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like to farm my little mini farm I have at my home because I only love to know how difficult it is. It's like so difficult. If it's not the squirrel, it's the deer. If no, it's the fungus. If no, it's the whatever insect. If no, it's the acorns that fall above. Oh my God!
Every year when I harvest beans, I think, how could anyone complain about the price of a pound of beans? They have not spent all this time picking them.
Dr. Biden said food is love. She was with me. She came to visit Wallace Stegner Kitchen operation in Florida.